Perfect. That's perfect. Just drop it down. Thanks, Rick. Great.
On the Flyers Broadcast Network. Here's Jason Martinez, Brian Smith, and Chris Terrian.
That's right. Welcome inside the Wells Fargo Center for afternoon matinee Philadelphia Flyers hockey as the Flyers look to get things moving in the right direction. Coming in 7 games played, 1-5-1 against the unblemished Minnesota Wild through 7 games at 5-0-2. It's Jason Martinez, Brian Smith on location, Chris Terrian. A lot of new. It's been a newsy kind of day, Bundy. 2 things right off the hop. Jet Lachenko has been sent back to the OHL Guelph Storm. His stint with the Flyers has ended, and he will go back to junior. And Cam York out 2 weeks with an upper body injury. Both players can have an effect on this roster, but certainly York immediately. More so than maybe Lachenko, who hasn't been in the lineup anyway the last couple of games.
Yeah, and I think, Jason, when you look at really what with Jet Lachenko, I think it's the right call. As I told you guys, meeting with Danny, that it seemed like that was the plan all along. They got a little look at him, gave him a couple of games, and he'll head back to his junior team. And where he will develop and continue his development, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just right now, the way the things are going for the Flyers, it's not a place to try to develop a young guy like that. And he'll have an opportunity to be one of the leaders on the Canadian World Junior team, and certainly back in Guelph, he'll be a leader on his team again, and a different persona, one that enters back to major junior hockey as a guy who's been in the NHL for a couple of games and a first-round pick. So it'll be an exciting time for him, but certainly time to get to work. And as for Cam York, he got dinged up at the end of that game the other night, and he's going to be out for 2 weeks is what we're hearing. So that changes things up a little bit. Eric Johnson will come back into the lineup today, but Cam York, for the most part, he's a guy that they've come to rely on as a solid defenseman, and they're going to miss him until they get back. So next man up attitude, that's all. The only way that you can handle an injury like that is to just deal with it like, hey, we got a veteran coming in that won a Stanley Cup 3 years ago. In comes Eric Johnson, and you'll have to get through these injury situations as the year comes about.
Tell us a little bit about what might be going through the mind of a guy like Jet Lachenko right now, having been here for a couple weeks now, going back. Always knew this was going to be a possibility. I would imagine that obviously you would want to stay here the whole year, but going back, I'm sure they gave him kind of a little bit of a instructional packet on how to go down there and just dominate, right? That's what they want to see, is just go down there and just absolutely have a fantastic year playing probably 20 minutes a night, you would imagine, and just kind of max out this year in preparation for next year.
I don't think there's any doubt about it, Brian. I think it gives him an opportunity too to be the kind of player that they want to see him. And again, I remember Danny telling me the line was very specific. He said, we're more concerned about Jet 5 years from now than we are 5 days from now. And that's so true. He's just a kid. And this is a league where you say, well, he might look good one night. The problem is it's the oncoming of the games, right? 82 games where a young guy can just get lost in the fold playing against grown men. And when you're just trying to pace yourself and to learn the game at the same time, it becomes very hard. It's a challenge. So, yeah, Smitty, he'll go back there. He'll play 20 minutes a night. He'll be a leader on that team. And I think if you're the Flyers, you're looking to see continued development. How does he get better this year from where he was last year and the next year after that? So he's got a bright future ahead of him. He seems like a great kid and a real energizer bunny on the ice. But once he puts all the components together for what it's like to be an NHL hockey player and continue to learn, he's going to be a special player down the road. The Flyers have themselves a very, very, very good hockey player on their hands.
Yeah, getting a little taste can send him back with a ton of confidence as
yes.
well. Bundy, let me ask you about this because, the Flyers are off. We know the start they're off to 1-5-1 through 7 games. And you're going to have stretches like this in a season, whether it's in December, January, February, at some point. Every team is probably going to go through a stretch like this. But when you start out like this, and I think sometimes we maybe lose perspective of, this is 82 games. This is not a sprint in the NHL. It is a marathon. Players there has to be a sense of urgency right now to get things moving in the right direction. But starting out like this, does that have a bigger impact on the room, the mood, the team than maybe a tough stretch in January or February where the record may be the exact same, but it just feels different?
Yeah, it does. It's tough getting out of the gate like this because you end up looking at the schedule and you have nothing but chasing ahead of you, right? When you look where you're at, like, to get back into the fold, so it's demoralizing. And you're going to hear stories that in some spin that we're in this, we'll get out of it. That's easier said than done. And the Flyers' goal right now is to just snap this curse, right? The losing curse that's gone on since the first game. They don't have a regulation or overtime win yet. They have a shootout win. So those are all little things that are important, but all they can focus on is playing a very, very good Minnesota team today. And getting out of this. You can't worry about what bad is going to happen. Minnesota doesn't care that you're having a lot of problems right now. And if you're the Flyers, you need to rely on some of your games last year where you played well, I thought, early in the year to get back into the fold right now. And again, that was the one difference, guys. I mean, the Flyers last year in some games, it's definitely not been the best start that they've had. It doesn't compare to last year, but there were a lot of games last year that they won simply on effort alone and second effort. And that's what they need to get back to. But the most important game of the year is this one today, because it is a determining factor of how quick the Flyers can get off this losing streak right now and try to get back in the column and climbing the standings to get back with the pack.
Bundy, I obviously, you look at the record overall, and that's the number people see. John Tortorella kind of attested to it yesterday that that the where they're at right now, for me anyway, looking at it, it's kind of two separate things. Like, they played better in the first 3 games than they have in the last 3 games, and I'm just curious of what you've seen just in the last 3 games, and did you see this team kind of snap out of a funk a little bit on Wednesday in the second half of that game, because it seemed like all of a sudden they just kind of flipped a switch?
Yeah, and they did, but let's not lose sight either of how they did that. Washington Capitals disappeared at that point of the hockey game. That's a reality. And whether you want to look at it any other way, that's fine. But the Capitals they put themselves in cruise control mode, and the Flyers took full advantage of that. Just one goal away, a Morgan Frost wraparound chance could have tied that game at 4. It could be talking about a different situation here today. Washington is no world beater, guys. They just had to happen to be playing decent right now, and they got away with one the other night in their home barn in D.C. But for the Flyers right now, they ended up – Smitty, the one thing that was different after that, I always say, the team turned it on after they were down 4-0, and they did. But the one thing that was different, and it's going to flow into some of my keys tonight, they had pucks and bodies towards the net and a more concerted effort than they had at any other point. And when you do that, good things happen. So no matter whether Washington decided to take a snooze with a 4-0 lead, the Flyers continued to push. That's something we saw last year. That was always a good sign of how the trajectory was. They wanted to keep pushing no matter what it was. They came back in that hockey game and made it interesting. But at the same time, the Capitals helped the Flyers out, but the Flyers also helped themselves out by getting a lot more pucks and good net presence in the form of bodies right in front of that net.
Yeah, Couturier responsible for 2 of those and really helped out on the Tippett goal and then the Mishkov goal as well. Let's get to the keys, Bundy. Key number 1, Bundy's 3 keys to victory. Key number 1 for the Flyers to come out of here today feeling a lot better than they have of late.
Yeah, well, the first one tonight, Jason, is going to be the start. The start's kind of hindered this team. They've fallen behind in almost every game that they've played in. Tonight's going to be key. So what you want to do tonight, you can't manufacture the lead. You can't say, we're going to get the 1-0 lead. You'd love to be able to do that. Every team would every night. But what you can do is you can work towards that lead and see how you play with the lead. Everybody plays different when you're down compared to when you're up. I'd like to see the Flyers flip the script on that today and take it to a good team in Minnesota. That's number 1. Number 2 tonight, even strength again. I know we're harping on it, and we got to return to it. It's got to be better. And again, it flows with what I just said, guys. Got to get the puck to the net and get bodies to the net. Only good things are going to happen. And the last thing tonight, be prepared for a team that's playing extremely well right now. This is number 3. The Minnesota Wild came in. They took apart 2 teams in Florida, both the Panthers 6-1, and I believe Tampa Bay, I believe it was 4-2 the other night. Be ready for a hockey team that's going to come in here. They're feeling wildly confident. That's not really a pun. I didn't mean to say it like that, but they are extremely confident right now. Yeah, and the Flyers will have to be ready for a Minnesota team that right now is feeling as good as any team in hockey right now. It's a good test for the Flyers, and I always say if you're going to break the bad stretch that you're in, do it against a good team. This is set up really good for the Flyers here today, guys.
Absolutely. Playing the Wild, they come in unblemished Monday. Does a player carry that? Hey, we break the streak and we did it against a team that's been playing. Like when you go to Florida, Bundy, and you beat the Panthers in LA. This isn't back in the day where Florida was a luxury trip for you.
Right.
That's tough sledding these days down in Florida. It's not easy to do.
Right.
It used to be a vacation. Bring the clubs with you on the trip.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah, you're so right, Jason. That's funny because you remind me of a luxury trip. Yeah. Go down to Florida for 3 days, play 2 games, walk out with 4 points, and had a good score in your scorecard in golf. It's very, very true. But no, I mean, yeah, there's no easy games anymore. But yeah, I like it. Like I'm saying tonight, if you want to beat this team, let's put it this way: I would rather the Flyers be playing Minnesota right today than Montreal. I would rather them play Minnesota today than play Minnesota tomorrow and flip the schedule, right?
Right?
Yeah, I mean, this is an opportunity for you to say, hey, we can build on something. But that being said, they're going to have to go out and they're going to have to take this hockey game. They did it last year. Remember the good wins they had, guys, last year? I think they'd beaten Florida. They'd beaten Vegas. They did some really, really good stuff early in the year. And they manufactured those wins with hard work, determination, dedication to the system. They've been flat lately. They've been really, really flat. And one of the things that they have to have tonight is a good start. Like I said, you can't manufacture the first goal, but you can manufacture your compete level and your effort level from the get-go. And that's certainly something the Flyers need to do better than they've done. They don't need to be down 1 or 2-0 in every single game they play. You're going to have a really hard time coming back, quite frankly, playing that kind of a formula night after night.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Great 3 keys once again, Big Al. We're going to take our first time out here. We're going to come back. We're going to go to the booth, talk to Tim Saunders, get a view from the booth, and much more. Line combinations all on the way as the Flyers get set for some matinee hockey to take on the Minnesota Wild. We're back after this on the Flyers Broadcast Network.
This is the Fanatic Fly.
Live as the Philadelphia Flyers get set to take on the Minnesota Wild. Let's go to the booth right now with the man, Tim Saunders. Line rushes just took place, Tim. We know York is out. TK back in the lineup?
Yeah, that was the only question mark, and especially with how the game ended the other night in Washington, you had to have your fingers crossed that Konechny is good to go. He is, apparently. Came out, was the second skater on the ice behind the starting goaltender, and took line rushes. So it looks like it's going to be Konechny with Couturier and Michkov. That seemed to jumpstart the Flyers the other night. Second half of that game in Washington on Wednesday, they were much better. The hope has got to be they can pick up where they left off.
Yeah, Tim, what clicked in that second period along the way, which really turned into the third period as well? Because they look like a team they haven't looked like a lot this year through that second half of the game, and can they carry that into today?
Yeah, we thought it was a couple of things, and you heard Bundy say, they were getting pucks to the net, and that certainly was a big part of it. We really thought the workers, meaning the fourth line, kind of started things when they finally got that forecheck going, and the rest of the team started to follow. But it was once they got that line put together, they started getting pucks to the net. You guys always talk about the heat map. There was a lot more going to the net, bodies and pucks, and that's key.
Yeah, I said it looked like a painter spilled his bucket of orange paint around the crease in that third period. Tim, you mentioned TK followed one man out onto the ice for warm-ups. That was the starting goaltender, Sam Ersson, and he definitely engenders confidence in his group that should a mistake happen up front, he'll be back there to bail him out. He's been excellent.
Yeah, you know what? Never mind the record. I think he's been probably the bright spot so far, along with power play and penalty kill. But of the individual guys, I think he's been a bright spot. He's given his team a chance to win. He's made all the saves that you would expect him to make, and then some. And keep in mind, even though his record is, 1-2-1, the Flyers have scored him 6 goals in his 4 starts. 6 goals, that's not much run support. So if they can support him a little bit, he's the right guy to have in there.
No question. Have a great call, Tim. Thanks.
Thanks.
Tim Saunders will have the call with Top Fedora coming up at the top of the hour between the Flyers and the Wild matinee hockey. It's Jason Martinez, Brian Smith. And Smitty, one of the things, the goaltender can be great at keeping the puck out of the net, but this is a sport of you got to score more than you give up.
Yeah.
You got to get some.
Yeah.
You got to score some goals too.
I mean, you see it. It just kind of ebbs and flows. It seems. Sometimes you're scoring a ton of goals, and then you're giving a ton in, and then sometimes you're able to cut down on the goals against, but it comes at the expense of scoring them. So they have to find that happy medium, obviously, and obviously the best teams can do that. And a lot of times it's just kind of being in sync. Obviously, as a 5-man unit, which the Flyers aren't right now, and Torts has talked a lot about that in the last few times that we've heard from him, that the forwards are playing too flat, and that doesn't allow the D to pinch and then start things the other way. But at the same time, you also have to have your goaltender kind of on fire. And the thing with the schedule is that Sam Ersson really hasn't been able to get into a rhythm where he's playing every other day, that sort of thing. He's been fine when he's been in the net. I think Ivan Fedotov has looked better as the season has gone on. I thought he looked more comfortable on Wednesday in Washington than we've seen him so far this year. Now we're wondering if we're going to see Kolosov come up tomorrow. That's been something that's been bandied about, so we'll see who plays tomorrow. But once they get through this weekend, the schedule starts to line up a little bit better for just consistent play every other day, and then you have a day off after the third game, that sort of thing. So that's another reason why I don't think it's really time to panic yet, just because this has been kind of a strange start to the season in terms of timing.
One thing, maybe it is strange. Well, one thing that's not strange is that the power or the penalty kill has picked up right where it left off last year. And if I were to tell you, well, Flyers are going to come into the year through their first 7 games, they're going to have the second-ranked penalty kill at over 85%. And you go, okay, that stands to reason. They had a good penalty kill last year, and they had obviously the power kill where they got some goals as well. But their power play is going to go from 32nd in the NHL to 10th, and they're going to click at 24%. You go, man, they're off to a 6-1 start. You'd think, right?
Yeah.
It's the 5-on-5 play that has to come up to that standard that the other two are right now.
Right, and it's again the same sort of concept as what we just talked about with the schedule, but for different reasons. Flyers haven't had a ton of 5-on-5 play. There have been a lot of penalties called on both sides of the puck in the Flyers games so far. So they've been on special teams a lot. There's been a lot of 4-on-4, things like that. So they're still trying to settle into that as well. It seems obvious that the league is issued some sort of directive to officials on certain ways to call certain things, and that usually what ends up happening is you see it a lot at the start of the year, and then it starts to shake itself out and kind of regress a little bit. The other thing that we've talked about is that guys keep getting tossed out of the circle. I mean, I don't know if anybody's keeping that stat. I'm sure somebody is somewhere, but Morgan Frost, it's like 3 times a game he gets thrown out.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing can disrupt you as well. So again, as it starts to settle in, I think that'll kind of take care of itself. The penalty kill, obviously the percentages are good, but I'm pretty confident that PK has had one good scoring chance per game, at least.
We've only given up one 5-on-4 goal all year.
There
was a 5-on-3 and a 4-on-3 goal.
Right.
It's
so
incredible.
When those goals start coming back again, I think you're going to start. Obviously that would have made a big difference right now if they could have gotten a few more of those shorthanded goals in the last couple of weeks. But they are getting their chances again this year.
Yeah, John Tortorella talked yesterday about how the consistent parade of special teams, whether you're on the power play or the PK, and both those things have been good, how it can disrupt the flow. He said he wanted to get Joel Farabee in more because he gets skipped sometimes. Because he wants to get, if it's all coming off a penalty kill, he wants to get Mishkov right out there because he doesn't want him to go a long period of time without playing. And then the other thing is the coaches can identify when a team's on a power play or penalty kill who's really got their legs in that day going, especially early in a season when you've been playing, with the travel and the back-to-backs. And he's going to identify, well, this guy's really got jump right now. I want to put him with another guy who's got jump, and that's when things start to get jumbled.
Yeah.
Because of that lack of consistency and flow of a 5-on-5 game over a pronounced period of time.
That was a great point, I think, that Torts made in his availability yesterday. And if you have a moment to go back and find that on the Flyers YouTube or whatever, that was a great 15-minute chat. But he makes a great point that we don't always even think of, is that, when a penalty ends, when a power play ends, no matter what team it's for, it's not like you snap your fingers and you're back to your normal 5-on-5 rotation. He talked about how it takes a full rotation of the 4 lines to get you back to the point where you're rolling the normal people that you want to again, and that takes. Yeah, that can take up to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
If there are no additional whistles.
40-second shifts.
Yeah.
It's 3 minutes.
So a shift is generally, they shoot for 40 to 50 seconds per shift. So that can take a while if there's no whistles. And if you get lucky, there might be, after the power play is over, quick whistle, go to a TV timeout, then you can reset.
Yeah, that helps.
But if it's straight play, you don't get those guys back out there together immediately. You have to get the guy who was in the box. If you were killing, you have to get him back in the rotation. If it was a power play, then you might have guys from 2 or 3 different lines out there, depending on how you've got things structured in that particular game, that were just on the ice for a full minute. They've got to get their win back, so you have to put other guys out for a while. So it's not just clicking the switch, go from special teams to 5-on-5. It can take a while. And with the amount of power plays that have been in these games total, not just the Flyers, but both teams, that really kind of throws a wrench in things a little bit.
You know what else throws a wrench in it? When Tyson Forrester fights, Joel Farabee fights, Konechny fights, and Couturier fights.
Like when they lost,
that can really disrupt things.
The one game when Tyson was in there for 17 minutes. 2, 5, and 10. I mean that can be a problem.
That's a bit of a hindrance to consistency. All right, we're gonna take our last timeout. Coming up top of the hour, we've got Tim Saunders, Todd Fedoruk, countdown to face-off and all the first period action between the Flyers and the Wild. But we'll tell you about line combinations and deep pairs next. And obviously, there's some changes today. Lachenko goes back to juniors. Cam York out a couple of weeks with an upper body injury. We're back after this on the Flyers Broadcast Network.
At the Flyers game, or make a pit stop at Wegmans and taste what you've been missing.
This is the Fanatic Flyers pregame show on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Flyers and Wild coming up in mere moments. Matinee hockey in Philadelphia in late October. Crisp fall day, great colors outside, great colors inside between the Wild and the Flyers. Tim Saunders and Todd Fordoric will be along with the countdown to face-off and all the first period action. But let's get to the line combinations in this one, Smitty, because I think we got some interesting line combinations. Something that John Tortorella talked about earlier was, Mishkov didn't feel comfortable on the left side, but he cannot deny the chemistry that Mishkov and Konechny have, and they're going to play with Sean Couturier in the middle.
So when this first came up, I don't know when it was, sometime in the last month, what Tort said was he was going to put Mishkov on the left because he didn't want to mess up Konechny's game. Now, obviously, that has changed. I don't know if there was a conversation there. I wouldn't be surprised if TK may have gone to him and said, I can do it. Let's just do it. Put me over there and see how it happens. So it's not something that's going to be a quick fix. You're going to have these two guys here for a long time. So if you want to find a way for them to play together, let's try every possible option that there is, and there really aren't a lot in terms of whether one goes to one side or the other. So I think the first run at it was good for TK, and again, between the two of them on that line, Coots can be the defensive presence and let them do their thing.
All right. The second line, you thought that was interesting. Morgan Frost is going to center Owen Tippett. We've seen those two play together a ton. But I don't know that we've seen those two play with Garnet Hathaway. I thought Garnet Hathaway was unbelievable the other night, by the way, especially in that second half of the game. He was doing what he does, being a real pain in the rear end and disruptive. He going to play with Frost and Tippett tonight.
I like the concept here because, again, Hathaway goes in there and he's a thorn. He goes into the corners and he causes a stir and people start paying attention to him. I think some of that attention paid to him will take attention away from Tippett and Frost. I think that might be a situation where Hathaway goes out there and opens up the ice for those two.
I feel like he's Russell Crowe in Gladiator. You're not entertained. You know what I mean? Like, he's out there to entertain me.
Yeah.
I'm Garnet Hathaway, teammate of the whole thing. Paling's going to center Lawton and Farabee. And then with Hathaway on that second line, you've got Noah Cates centering Nick Deslauriers, who plays his third straight game, and Tyson Forster on the wing in that line. Torts needs to get him going. He may be starting there, but I think we'll see him in other spots.
Yeah, I mean, if the Hathaway thing works early, maybe they keep it there. But I see Forster probably moving up the lineup here as this game goes on, just in terms of, trying to get him going and, fix the issues that Torts has, which, again, we asked him. He said everything. Yeah. And he said it 4 times in that one pregame if you heard it. So, we'll see where it goes.
With Cam York out now 2 weeks dealing with an upper body injury, that allows some changes to be made, obviously, with the defensive pairs. Eric Johnson will draw back in. We'll get to him in a moment. But Sanheim moves back over to his natural side on the left side and looks like he's going to play with the right-handed Rasmus Ristolainen. These two played together a little bit maybe last year in the beginning of the year and a little bit the year prior. But Risto moves up and he'll play the right side with that top pair.
I mean, there's certainly some size on that pairing, is there not? Those are probably
that's the biggest third D he's probably been in years.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Johnson certainly is no shrimp, and neither is Zamula. But those guys have they have the height and they have the the heavy type of defensemen that go in there and just make your life miserable if you're back there in the corner with them.
Sealer and Drysdale will be a pair on that second pairing, and then Zamula and Johnson, they've played together a bit this year as well. And what you wonder is, with Cam York out a couple weeks, is this an opportunity to call up Emil Andre, who they had called up earlier, didn't see any game action on that road trip. Is it an opportunity to call him up or Adam Ginning up, another left-handed defenseman? We'll see what Danny decides to do.
Yeah, they certainly have an opportunity here to bring one of them up and give him a little bit of a little bit of a whirl. I was a little surprised that they called Emil up for that trip, just from the standpoint of Torts had even talked about not worrying about it and even having to go with 5D if a problem came up because they wanted those guys playing. I think a little bit of it had to do with the fact that the Phantoms had a pretty light schedule while the Flyers were out west, so there wasn't a ton that he was going to miss anyway. So he just came up and was along for the ride. But, definitely an opportunity there to bring one of those guys up. Obviously, I think if you had to do a direct comparison, Andre is a little bit more comparable to what York brings than Jennings is. But, I'm sure they have some thoughts on who they want to give a look to at this point.
Emil's bank account's happy.
Yes, he is.
I'll tell you that. That NHL dough versus AHL dough. All right, Tim Saunders, Todd Fedoruk, they've got the countdown to face-off, followed by all the first-period action between the Flyers and the Wild. You'll be listening to the Fanatic Flyers pregame show on the Flyers Broadcast Network.